man said, "or this is the only freedom we'll ever know." The two men scrambled up the trail, ignorant of the tracks they were making in the dirt and the bloody footprints left on the steep rock faces. When they pushed through the last wall of tangled brush and arrived out into the open, they found themselves atop a rocky bluff, high above the sea. By now the sun was low on the horizon. The ocean waves shimmered in bronze and gray. A cool breeze drew the sweat off their bodies, while the sound of crashing waves echoed up from below. The young men were staring. "I see forever," one of them said. "How do we go?" another asked. The leader looked around. He saw no sign of rescue, no sign of help. Maybe they were supposed to jump. He stepped to the edge and looked down. Piles of rocks made up a jagged shoreline 200 feet below. They stuck out too far from the base of the cliff to imagine one could reach the water. Even if they could jump far enough to make the water's edge, they would die broken and battered after plunging through the shallows and hitting the rocks. Stepping back from the edge, Desi shuddered. He'd led them to their doom. He suddenly wished he wasn't the leader, wished even more intensely that he'd never received the message or been given the necklace. And then he saw something that gave him hope. A knotted line had been anchored to the side of the cliff. It dropped down 30 feet, where a weighted end hung loosely. It looked as though the rope hung in front of an opening in the side of the cliff. A way out. He had been promised a way out. He had no experience in such things, but he quickly saw the drawback to using it. If he could see it, so could the hunters. He removed the necklace and placed it over the head of his brother. "Climb down." His brother looked down at the rope and the rocks far beneath it. He shook his head. "Go," Desi insisted. "Lead them." "No," he said. "You take them. I have no faith." Desi grasped his brother by the arm and dragged him to the edge of the cliff. Reaching over, he managed to grasp the rope. He pulled on it to test the security, then placed it in his brother's hands. "She promised a way out. This is it. Now go!" Pushing through the jungle, a half-mile behind the group of escapees, a tall Caucasian man with a bald head and narrow, hawkish eyes found himself enjoying the hunt. Dressed in khakis and a safari vest, he carried 2 pistols on separate belts and walked with a shotgun in his hands. On the island, he was known as the Overseer, but at previous stops in his life, he'd been a big game hunter, a trail boss in some of the toughest parts of the world, and a mercenary for hire to anyone with the right denominations of currency. Here on the island, he found himself grinning as the dogs locked in on the scent and pulled hard against their leads. He laughed as the handlers struggled to keep up, holding the animals back and hacking their way through the brush with machetes. "Run them down," the Overseer growled with a demented sense of glee. "If even one man escapes, each of you will suffer the punishment meant for them." If his men needed any more motivation, this was enough. They pushed on, climbing higher and moving faster as the foliage thinned. Before long, they were tracking bloody, scuffling footprints imprinted by raw, uncovered feet. It made the trail easy to follow, but left the Overseer wondering about the course they'd chosen. Previous escapees had always run for the other side of the island, fleeing the civilized but prison-like compound in hopes of surviving in the rocky, volcanic wasteland. These men were taking a different path, one that kept them away from the dividing wall and its razor wire and cameras. It was curious, he thought, but it didn't matter much. Soon they'd be trapped between the dogs and the cliffside. The dogs began yelping more intensely. They smelled the quarry up ahead. "Let them go," the Overseer shouted. The handlers dropped their leashes and the dogs shot forward. They rushed upward and vanished from sight, a lethal pack only a fraction removed from the wolves they were descended from.